The amazing worlds of Norse mythology. Yggdrasil, Asgard, Fenrir, Ragnarok. If you know these names, you likely know something about Norse mythology. Before the arrival of the Christian religion, Norse people in today's Scandinavia had incredibly vivid and detailed stories about the gods who ruled the worlds. The main sources for the Norse myths are two books called the Eddas. Both describe the universe as beginning with two worlds, a world of ice and a world of fire, slowly floating toward each other. The ice melted by the fire's heat formed into a being called Ymir. And the first god, Buri, emerged after him. Buri later helped give life to his grandchildren, the brothers Odin, Vili, and Vid. Ymir was murdered by these brothers, but Earth could not have formed without his remains, which became the land, sea, and sky. Later, the brothers found two trees lying on a beach. They provided these trees with the breath and qualities of life, and the trees became the first humans, Ask and Embla. The Norse universe is composed of 9 worlds. These include Niflheim, the underworld, Midgard, Earth, and Asgard, the world of the gods. All 9 worlds are connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree, which is a giant silver gray ash tree.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to English for You. I am Mike.
And I'm Laura.
We are talking like this because we are Vikings.
We are?
We're pretending to be because we're looking at the amazing worlds of Norse mythology.
Woohoo.
Now, when we think of gods and heroes, I think a lot of us think of Greek mythology, right?
Right,
Apollo
exactly.
and Zeus and that kind of stuff. But I've seen a few Norse mythology shows, right? There's the Viking show that was popular. I'm still waiting to play. I haven't gotten around to playing Assassin's Creed. Had a whole game, a huge game in the Viking world. So I'm sure a lot of these names will pop up in these games.
Okay.
And, it's good to look at different types of culture and history. And Norse mythology, when we're talking about the Norse people, basically Vikings, we're thinking of the countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, that northern part of Europe. And of course, those guys, they conquered a lot of territory. They not only conquered a lot of England, but they went down to Spain. I think they even went down into Russia. These guys got on their boats and they went around killing people and, burning down villages and doing all sorts of exciting, wonderful stuff that makes for great movies and video games. But they also had a very interesting mythology, basically the stories and legends of their gods and heroes. So let's get into it. We will warn you, there are some pretty unusual names here, all right? Because we're talking about names from a long time ago in a language not really too closely related to English.
No.
So bear with us. Okay, let's begin with a few names here. Yggdrasil, Asgard, Fenrir, Ragnarok. They're kind of fun to say. Absolutely. If you know these names, you likely know something about Norse mythology, or maybe you just like heavy metal music. So they also kind of get into heavy metal sometimes, right?
Okay, 所以我们刚刚就有蛮难的挑战，对我来讲 Yggdrasil, Asgard, Fenrir, or Ragnarok. Am I saying these right? Okay?
Yeah, I think so.
如果你认识这些名字，哇，你可能对这个我们今天的主题，也就是 Norse mythology 就是北欧神话，其中的 mythology 就是神话集这样的意思，它是个名词，而 myth 这个名词则是神话的意思，所以你可能是对北欧神话有所了解哦。
All right, so what time are we talking about? Well, we get an idea in the next sentence. It says, before the arrival of the Christian religion, Norse people in today's Scandinavia had incredibly vivid and detailed stories about the gods who ruled the world. So we're kind of talking about the 400s, the 800s, up to, the early 1000s, this type of period. The Dark Ages is what we call that in Europe for that period of time before the arrival of the Christian religion. Things didn't stop. People still did stuff, and they still have gods and legends just different ones from the ones that came along later. But these were incredibly vivid and detailed stories. When something is described as incredibly, it's very, very. It's a lot. It's, just a whole bunch, more than expected. Very, very, in other words. Here's the simplest way of understanding it. The sun is incredibly hot. The sun is very, very hot. Yeah, absolutely. And these stories were also vivid. When something is vivid, it's bright, it's easily seen, it's very clear. So we could talk about a vivid picture or something like that has lots of light in it. It's very easy to see. It's not kind of foggy or mysterious. No, it's very clear. And if you're telling a vivid story, it's full of surprises. It's full of life. It's full of drama. It's not boring, in other words. For example, we could say the books of Charles Dickens are filled with vivid characters like Oliver Twist and Ebenezer Scrooge. Even their names are kind of vivid and give you ideas about what kinds of people these are.
I love those. OK, 我们刚刚有提到形容词 Christian 指的是基督教的哦。那我们还看到 incredibly 这个副词就是极度或是极其如何如何。For example, the chemistry experiment was incredibly exciting with colorful reactions and unexpected outcomes. 还有我们提到的 vivid 这个形容词就是生动的。For example, the movie's special effects were so vivid that it felt like the creatures were right in front of us.
All right, so here's a good question. If this stuff all happened almost 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, how do we know about it now? Good question. The main sources for the Norse myths are two books called the Eddas. That's how we know.
The Eddas.
We talk about the Eddas, or we read the Eddas. So the people might be long gone, but the books are still around and they tell the stories in the same way that the Bible tells the story of Jesus, or, Greek myths written by Homer and stuff like that. We can still read them today.
OK, 所以北欧神话的主要来源是两本名为埃达 the Eddas 的书。Tell me more about these two books.
Well, both of the books describe the universe as beginning with two worlds, a world of ice and a world of fire, slowly floating toward each other. Very interesting. And it kind of makes sense. All right, we know in Iceland, they have a lot of volcanoes. That might be the world of fire. And this northern part of Europe, Scandinavia, is very cold, a world of ice. And these are slowly floating toward each other. Very interesting. In the same way, we create heaven and hell, and we have places for gods and other things to live. They did something similar. In their case, the worlds are floating together. If something floats, it basically is being carried on the surface of something, or it's being blown by the wind. So if you put a piece of wood in the river, it will float down the river. If you let a feather go into a wind, it will float in the wind. It's not flying. It's not kind of controlling itself. It's just kind of being pushed along by a force like water or wind. Here's an interesting one. Some little spiders can float for many miles across land or water, even though they don't have wings. It's true.
And they're still alive.
And they're still alive. They can actually travel over water. That's how you might find spiders on an island.
So smart.
Very interesting.
OK, float 是什么呢？这是个动词哦，有漂移、飘动的意思。我们常会用 float towards something， 就是飘向什么什么。所以我们刚刚提到的这两本书都是描述宇宙的开端。哇，有两个世界，一个是冰之世界，冰的世界，还有火之世界，然后缓慢的朝着彼此飘进。
All right, back to the article. The ice melted by the fire's heat formed into a being called Ymir, and the first god Buri emerged after him. All right, so this would be sort of like Adam and Eve, at the beginning of the Bible. There's every sort of myth or legend or religion has how life began. And here the fire and the ice combined and it formed water, I guess. But the water became a being or a creature or a person called Ymir. And the first god Buri emerged after him. So there you go. We would call that the origin story of many of the Norse myths. To emerge is to appear, to come about, usually slowly over time. It doesn't just suddenly, bam, suddenly it's there. No, it kind of comes out of something. You could think of plants emerging from the ground. You plant the seed, you water it. After a few days, boink, there's that little bit of green. emerging out of the dirt. It comes out slowly through maybe a natural process. Here's an example of something emerging in a cultural process. Rock and roll emerged out of the combining of country music and rhythm and blues. Not on one day, suddenly, over a long time, a lot of different people, doing different things, mixing different styles or mixing different myths.
Okay, so 在这里呢，我们先来提一下，刚刚有提到一个 being 这个字哦，在本课是指的是生物的意思，而 emerge 这个动词就是出现。For example, after hours of brainstorming, a brilliant idea began to emerge in our group discussion about the school talent show. OK, 回到课文提到就是冰被火的热量融化，形成一个名叫 Ymir 的存在。而第一位神，也就是什么 Buri， 是不是则在他之后就出现喽？
All right, so far I've never really heard of Ymir and Buri.
No?
Not too familiar with these guys, but hold on. We're going to get to someone you probably have heard of. Buri later helped give life to his grandchildren, the brothers Odin, Vili, and V.
Okay.
Ymir was murdered by these brothers. Oh my gosh. But Earth could not have formed without his remains, which became the land, sea, and sky. Oh, so the Earth was made out of the body of Ymir. Very interesting. When you murder someone, well, and I hope you don't, you'll be in big trouble if you do, you kill someone without permission. It's not like a soldier in a war or someone is attacking you and you have to, save your life by killing that person. No, you're like, I hate that guy, so I'm going to get a gun and shoot that guy. And yeah, you'll go to jail for a very long time, maybe your whole life, because murder is illegal, but it does happen, especially in myths.For example, in the first book of the Bible, this would be the Jewish and Christian Bible, Cain murders his brother Abel. Again, a Bible, a story having a murder at the kind of very beginning of the myth.
Oh, okay. So murder 这个字呢，当作动词有谋杀的意思，不过它也可以当作名词来用，同样也有谋杀的意思。举例来说 ，In the mystery novel, the detective worked tirelessly to solve the murder.Of a wealthy businessman.
Oh, it was his secretary.
Right, okay. Now, in that same sentence, we also saw our language in focus, so let's take a look at that. Okay, 当我们用 no or not or never something something 在接上 without 后面接名词或者是 VING， 这就有双重否定这样子的一个用法跟意味哦。那这个句型是以两个否定词负负得正，表示肯定啦，所以有强调语气的功能。那注意哦 ，without 是介系词，所以我们后面一定要接上动名词或者是名词。For example, she never goes to the gym without warming up first.意思就是他每次去健身房都一定会先热身。Or here's another one. No one should travel without checking the weather forecast first. 每个人旅行前都应该先查看天气预报，不能掉以轻心这样的意思哦。
Okay, so Ymir was murdered, which is bad.But the world was created out of his remains, which was good for us, not so much for Ymir. Yes, we created the world out of his remains. This is an interesting word. Basically, it's a body. It's a dead body or what's left of a dead body after it's kind of, lying out in nature and kind of breaking down. You might find the remains of an animal that was killed or something. It might be the bones of it, might be some skin or some fur.Or something like that. Notice we always put S on it. The remains of a person or the remains of several people. It's never just the remain of one person. Here's something you might read in the newspaper. The hikers found some human remains in the woods last week. The police are now looking into it. Maybe another hiker went missing a year ago, fell down, fell off a cliff, and then they find what's left of their body, the remains.Remains 我们通常都是用它的复数形来呈现，就是遗体的意思。For example, the archaeologists discovered ancient remains buried deep beneath the layers of soil. All right, so now we have the world. That's how the world was created, but the world is still empty. Later, it says the brothers, that's Odin, Vili, and V. Later, the brothers found 2 trees lying on a beach. they provided these trees with the breath and qualities of life, and the trees became the first humans, Ask and Embla. So there you go. There's the Adam and Eve from the Norse mythology. All right, so this is the story that the Norse people, the Vikings, would tell each other about how the world was created, basically. And then they added this: the Norse universe is composed of 9 worlds. So not just about the world that we live on, but also the planets, the sun, the stars, and all that kind of stuff. These include Niflheim, the underworld, I guess where you go when you die, Midgard, Earth, where we live now, and Asgard, the world of the gods. That might kind of be like heaven or something like that.
OK, 我们提到的 compose 这个动词就是组成或是构成，所以我们常说 be composed of something 就是由什么组成或是构成什么什么。而刚刚有提到 underworld 就是阴间地狱，它是一个名词哦。所以北欧宇宙由9个世界组成，包括了 Niflheim 就是冥界 the underworld，然后 Midgard 也就是地球，以及 Asgard 也就是众神的世界啦。
All 9 worlds are connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree, which is a giant silver gray ash tree. Very interesting. That kind of reminds me of like Lord of the Rings. I think they have a big magical tree in there too. And of course, the writer of Lord of the Rings was very influenced by a lot of this Norse mythology as well.
对耶 ，OK， 所以所有9个世界都被连接在一起，由这个世界树，也就是 Yggdrasil 连接。那这是一个巨大的银灰色的 ash tree。ash 是什么呢？就是光蜡树。
All right, so we've learned a lot about the creation myth of the Vikings, the Norse people, Norse mythology. We're going to learn a lot more coming up in the next 2 days with some other characters that you will definitely know from some popular movies in the last few years, but we'll get to that later on. For now, before we wrap up, we have our chat question. What other stories of the beginning of the world do you know? And tell us about them.
Not many, but one story I know about how the world began is from ancient Greek tales.
Okay, yeah.
They say everything started with chaos. A big empty space.
Oh,
and from chaos came earth, right? And a special force called love. Eros, right? After that, lots of gods and powerful beings appeared, creating the world.
Yeah, and they kind of had like father gods, like the Titans, I think. And then they had the children of them. And those are the gods like Aphrodite and Apollo.
I'm really bad at names, but yeah.
It's interesting how these, creation myths from all around the world, totally different times and places, they often have similar elements, similar ways of organizing, telling these stories. Very interesting stuff.
Different names, though.
Different names, absolutely. All right, we'll be back with more good stuff about all this tomorrow, so we will see you then in the halls of Asgard. Bye-bye. Vocabulary Review.
Incredibly. Judy is incredibly kind. She is always willing to help her classmates with their homework. Vivid. Jimmy's vivid description of the sunset made us feel like we were right there, seeing the sky turned orange and pink. Float. Fog floated across the road and made it difficult for drivers to see. Emerge. The dolphin emerged from the surface of the ocean and jumped through the air. Murder. The police discovered that the dead woman was murdered by a man who attacked her last night. Remains. After Mark died, his family had his remains buried close to their home.
智慧小补帖
Mythology. Compose. Underworld. Ash.